So my role with the co-op, the Casino Food Co-op, for those of you who, let's take a step back, the co-op is the beef export processing plant in Casino, and we also have the pork processing plant in Bundjalung. And it is a co-op, so it's formed by or made up of 500 plus farming members, all which are active farmers in the Richmond, Tweed, Clarence catchments, and they're all active members. So they're all members who process beef through the plant. And my role, given that they're all farmers, is in member services. So I work with projects within the membership, facilitating different support, natural disaster support, or projects or initiatives within our industry space. So that's me. That'll do. And just enter, Eli. Or just arrows. Oh, either. Oh well, maybe I didn't hit save, but I'll juggle them around. What's unique, I suppose, about the co-op? Look, we are Australia's largest meat processing co-op. We've got 500 plus producer members. We're based in the Northern Rivers. We've got a great rainfall. We're in a tropical to subtropical area, and we have a productive landscape. And importantly, we also have a board that's really committed to environmental. So obviously our corporate pillars are the typical ones you'd see in any organisation, of the economic and the social and so on. We also have an environmental one, acknowledging that our core business and our membership is based on farming the environment. How do I go back, Eli? Up. Okay, so look, just to cut to the short of it. Often it's a question in people's minds. So what's the bloke from the meatworks doing at a day like this? Speaking about climate, speaking about environment, pastures, and all this sort of stuff. So what we value at the co-op is the fact that that landscape management and food production are intrinsically really closely tied. So without one, you don't have the other. We also operate extensively in the global marketing network around the world with products, and what's very evident now in the food space globally and domestically is not the privilege but the expectation from our supply lines, our customers, our consumers worldwide, that we are good stewards of the land. That's in agriculture, full stop, not just meat. So I guess in our minds, we want to pursue that very proactively, the front foot, as it's been explained, rather than that reactive role. So we see ourselves as leaders in this space, in that commercial space, leading our members in this direction. So to tie all of these different things together, what we, as a production or a processing sector, we can do some really great things. Our members do really great things, but how do we gain all the good things that we do, and how do we package that up and tell the world that story? Because there's so much perceptual misunderstanding, even with our own supply chain. So it's, I guess, taking into account that there are some great things that we're doing, which we'll get into, but then how do we package that up as a story so that our supply chain actually trusts us and that we can demonstrate, not just, you'll hear the word often used in these corporate spaces of greenwashing. Just, it's a document, it's a new banner, it's a brand, it's something, it's just a glossy brochure that we hand around. Greenwashing. How do we actually, as a co-op or as an industry, actually physically demonstrate to our supply chain of what we're doing on our little patch and where our product comes from. So I've spent the last couple of years working in this space. I've just recently developed what we call now is our River Crystal initiative. Now this is not a brand, it's very similar to say a Heart Smart kind of it underpins a lot of our products, our hides, our offals and our brands worldwide. And so keeping it really simple, how do we take all of this technical knowledge, everything that's out there for a farmer who just wants to be good at farming their patch, how do we take all of that and package it neatly together? And so that's what we've done with the River Crystal initiative. It focuses on supporting farm management practices to improve the health of our rivers catchment area and our broader environment, obviously. So we've got a real strong connect there with our catchment, with catchment health. So it's water, land and carbon, keeping it really simple, although it's not simple, but we're keeping it simple. So we'll skip back over him again. Okay, in the carbon space, so it's, yes, River Crystal is the initiative, and I refer to it as, in this initiative has 3 streams, pardon the pun. So one of those streams is the carbon space. What is our industry? What's the red meat industry as a whole, not just at the farm level? What's the whole industry doing? Why is it important to us? And our ambitious goal at the co-op is that we increase carbon in agricultural soils and vegetation to mitigate livestock emissions and improve productivity and sustainability in grazing systems. Our industry at a much higher level has committed or has an aspirational target of being carbon neutral by 2030. Will we get there? Does it matter if we get there? Probably not. But what is important is that all eyes are focused in that one direction, and that's what we really support. No one probably knows whether we'll get there. There's lots of things changing in our industry to angle us, but it's first and foremost is unifying an industry, which it has done. So, which then points to a lot of landscape management, obviously, practices which will influence it. So, it's a tricky one. I'm not sure, obviously, of the dynamics of the room, who's who and where you all are. But look, the carbon farming thing it's complex, to say the least, and we could spend a day talking about it. At present, very, very difficult for someone, a typical North Coast farmer who may be on 250 acres with 60 or 80 breeders to buy into that carbon space. Again, we as a co-op see that even if that one farmer did that, that still might not, for our supply chain or for our industry as a whole, have a huge impact. So we're really looking at this aggregated approach. One farmer may not have a huge impact, but 500 farmers will have an impact in our catchment. Farmers ask me, well, that's wonderful that the ERF, which is the Emissions Reduction Fund, has a wonderful pathway that can lead you into a position where you can farm your carbon, and they do. Farmers ask me, well, Joe, what is my pathway? What is our pathway? How are we going to get there? So the co-op has quite a large project with MLA and with our producer membership, which at the moment is establishing an aggregated pathway. So it's somewhere in the vicinity of $1 million, this project. All of our membership is involved, and we're certainly seeking to generate a model which will enable all small-scale farmers to come together in one group under one banner to head down that pathway. Now, at the moment, to become registered with the ERF, just registered, ballpark figure, somewhere in the vicinity of $40,000 to $80,000. Now, You could say that, well, yes, we've created, I was trying to think of an analogy, like I suppose it'd be, I was sort of looking at that doorway there, that goes up into the loft. It'd be like saying, yes, yeah, we've put a doorway in this room, we've put a doorway, it's up there. That's how you all get out today. Yes, you can't accuse us of not sort of building a doorway. It's for a lot of farmers, it's frustrating because that's, to become ERF registered, that's their way out. That's their doorway up there. So it's financially burdensome. These are just facts. I'm not on any particular, don't have an agenda to rubbish it at all. It's just that these are facts. And so this is why we probably see not a lot of people becoming engaged with it. So the project with the co-op is, how do we knock all them doors down? How do we knock all them barriers down that are preventing producers from entering that space? And then the next question is, so now that we've entered the space, do we actually want to become carbon farmers as such and farm and trade a credit? Or do we want to inset that value into our product, or attach it to our product, or attach it to our supply chain? It's called insetting rather than offsetting, where someone does something bad but you do something good, so you sell your good to them and they become good, just like you. That's offsetting. Insetting is where you're doing something good and you hold on to that value and you tie that value back into your supply chain, whether it's at a leather seats in a Mercedes in Europe, or whether it's in a Gucci handbag, or whether it's on your product at one of your favourite supermarkets. So that's a bit of a fork in the road for industry at the moment is, yes, well, once we enter that space, what do we actually do with that value or that credential? And that's something that we're really having quite an arm wrestle about in our industry, and especially within the co-op at the moment, is once, these farmers are doing this, how do we package or retain that value? Because if I, as a farmer, sell my credit to an external source, that has then not only left my property, no different to selling beef or coal, or it's a resource that's now left my property, it's also left the industry, and in some cases it's even left the country. So you no longer have that credit. So do we want that as an industry? And that's probably a lot of people thinking in that space now. What do we do when we generate this credit? But we've got to go so far back, we have to be able to even measure that credit, be able to be confident that that credit does exist, and then what do we do with it? So this is very complicated, as I said, but this is something that we as a co-op realise that there are producers out there with huge landscape potential, a huge passion, absolute the desire and will to do this sort of stuff. But we need an engine that's going to make it work for them, so that they can all come on board and we can make it work. So these are just a couple of the things. So that's virtually what the product is. Our product is looking at, well, what models and methods are there around the world that are going to suit our aggregated co-op approach. We've done our carbon emissions assessment, very important. If you want to know what your footprint is, well, then you have to do an emissions assessment. So what do you emit from your farm, or per kilos of live weight? What's the environmental capacity of your land to sequester carbon from the atmosphere? What's your baseline? What is your actual soil carbon, soil organic carbon, so that when you remeasure it in 5 years' time, you actually have a baseline measurement. Where have we come from? Have we increased? Have we declined? At least you have that measurement. That's very, very important. Design and implement this is what I'm talking about, a bit of arm wrestle that we're having. So design and implement a machine that we can spit a verified credit unit out of. In what form? At this point, we're still lots of opinions, but yet to make a decision. This here, so 25 of our farmers participated in an emissions assessment report. Now, I can just give you some quick summaries on that just to give you some idea. So that's a really nice, neat cross-section of our membership across the Northern Rivers. Per kilograms of live, so for every kilo of live weight, that they generated or that they produced off their farm, that 1 kilo of live weight carries with it 13.4 kilos of CO2 emitted. Sounds a lot. So actually taking, what is it? There's a lot of chitter chatter, a lot of commentary, a lot of noise, depending on within our industry of what is it? Maybe different in different parts of the land, but we wanted to know what is it in our region. So it was 13.4 kilos of carbon per 1 kilogram of live weight.
Is that what they breathe out? The cows breathe it out, the CO2, or how is it working? Like how do you come to that figure?
Predominantly, burp, belching.
And breathing. So as humans also, we all breathe, we all produce CO2, don't we?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Does that include the carbon sink in the soil? That's a different calculation?
So a footprint, first of all, we work out what do we send up into the atmosphere, first and foremost. But that's coming, so when I say that 13.4, that includes cattle or livestock. In our case, we're beef graziers predominantly, so that includes fertiliser, tractor, electricity, all of those things. Funny thing is though that probably 92% of that emissions is attributed from your livestock. So the fact that you drove a tractor to town every day still has very little impact on your cattle are your biggest part. So it's no surprise that the red meat industry has become a target for this idea that the red meat industry is bad for the environment.
Yeah, and I want to get away from that from the point of view that this is how much we make, but you're not taking into consideration other things that might counteract that, such as the soil carbon sink that's been created.
Perfect. That's half my speech done.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, after half time, there you go. We just caught up. Yep, so exactly. So what we need to know, the industry's never been able to have a sensible conversation, it's this pop of taking criticism, but just sits and looks, with little to say, no rebuttal.
Or we scream at the television.
Yeah, we scream, but what do we scream? Lock the gate, go away, up yours. What do we scream? Do we scream? Actually, in fact, yes, we know what our emissions are now. We know what our ability of our landscape is, and that's a big part of our carbon, our baselining is then measuring. So the next step of this project then is, okay, so is all of the landscape management practices that we now acknowledge that can sequester. So we've looked at a number of different pasture trials within this exercise as well. Now, being a beef farmer myself in the Doubtful Creek area, just outside of our casino, huge results and gets us very excited about our capacity to be able to sequester carbon from the atmosphere and put it into our soil. And just to keep up with time, I'll just summarise this. In the 2021 financial year, my emissions up into the atmosphere from my Holder farm was 509 tonnes. Sounds a lot, probably is. On a 6 hectare trial block that was measured with Southern Cross's laboratory and a few practices, bits and pieces that we've done, 22 tonnes of carbon was sequestered from the atmosphere and put into my soil. So 1.5% soil organic carbon increase. So doing the maths just quickly, on 2% of my land, of my farm, just 2%, I sequestered 30% of my carbon. That's on 2%. So then we all get very excited, well, what happens if you did it on 15%? And what did he do, and what that practice? So again, it's actually understanding. So, and this has all been now built into this project. And so, what are the practices associated with achieving that outcome? And that's what we're now endorsing with the co-op, within the co-op to our members. Is yes, we can do a measurement. Yes, we have answers in terms of farm practices with our ability to be able to sequester that carbon. So effectively I'm offsetting my own carbon. Carbon is a big thing, one of those streams that we talked about. Soil is the next one. Soil is the foundation, obviously, of a grazing system. Without soil, we don't have grass. Without grass, we don't have beef, simply. So part of our, coming back to our River Crystal initiative, what are we doing in this space? What's the co-op doing in this space? We pay for all soil tests of our members within the co-op. Obviously understanding your soil, knowing what limitations or what strengths and weaknesses your soil has is very important in making a production decision. So in that we've created a soil club. And we do all of these real soil nerdy kind of things where we go out in days and we have people by the name of Dave Forrest that come out and he has a bit of a talk to them, and we do some wonderful things at times. But really, again, it comes back to these farmers. You know, yes, it's a soil. You know, we're paying for soil tests. Yes, we're having these information days. It's really just, again, acknowledging in a very farmerish way that soil is important to your business. And informed decisions are also very important to your business. And so with our landscape, our catchment health in the Richmond River, just another fun fact again, the Richmond River is the dirtiest river in New South Wales. It has an eco-health rating of D+. So I think it's the third or fourth dirtiest river in Australia. Why is it dirty? It's not dirty because of, you know, heavy metals and all bits and pieces. I guess it has that health rating like that because of the nutrient load in the water. I'll keep it really simple. Why is there nutrient in the water? There's nutrient in the water because there's soil in the water. Where does the soil come from? The soil comes from our farms. So again, it's coming back to these farmers. Your soil is important to you. Yes, it is. Right, let's keep it on our farm, first and foremost. Tick in the catchment health. So very much is heavily involved in that soil space as another stream. So we've got carbon, we've got soil. Again, they're environmental things. So they're very much layered over the top of each other. There's not something out here and something out here. They sort of coexist together and support each other, a lot of these practices. Water is the third one. Water, water, water. Something that we didn't see a lot of for a few years, and then something we saw a fair bit of in recent times. Water, water everywhere. So look, yes, based off that catchment health report, you know, we as a co-op, we're out in that global market space talking about Australia being a clean, green environment, but yet our farming base is within probably, well, as we say, you know, on the catchment, which is the dirtiest catchment in the state. So is that a good look? No, it's not. Should we fix it? Yes, we should. Again, being very, very proactive and a real leader in this space. So, cut to the short of it, I go around a lot of farms. We assess their riparian areas and I find funding, and we catchment farms that, you know, where they're willing and able. We do lots of groovy stuff to get cattle out of the river and to restore their riparian area into more of a natural, healthier state, in summary. And that's, I have absolutely no rules when I do this. However we can get them cattle out of that river and restore that riparian area, we'll do it in whatever way, shape or form we can, whether that's to fence off the bank. That's a wonderful thing to do, to fence off a riverbank, but then where do your cattle water? So the project does focus a lot around the infrastructure. So wells, dams, tanks, troughs, pipe, you name it. It focuses. So it has a real core focus on infrastructure. If we get that infrastructure in place, what we then find is there's actually an ecologist in every farmer. If we can look at getting that infrastructure in place, it's a very bottom-up approach. We then don't need to go onto a farm and tell them what a dreadful job they're doing. If we focus on the actual core issue, which is the actual infrastructure, that enables them, that empowers them then to go ahead and perform their own riparian restoration. And so we've had numerous successes in these areas. Like it's just one of those strengths, that's one of those sort of byproducts of doing something good. Something else good seems to pop up as well. A number of, well, this was a classic case of when we fenced off a riparian, we built a dam, we got troughs in different areas. He was then able to rotationally graze rather than being set stocked on one big paddock. We fenced off the riverbank, and then just the way the fence had to go, just to stay out of the high watermark, there was a few hectares of land that was on the creek side. That farmer in this case decided, well, why don't you plant some trees, Joe? I've got a better idea. Why don't we contact the koala guys? They were it was a high value linkage area. Why don't we put a koala plantation there? So that's what we did. We planted 2,000 koala trees, and we had a bit of a day with the community in bits and pieces. And oh yes, that's my saying. Yes, there's an ecologist in every farmer. So how am I going for time?
Right on.
As in, I've got to finish now?
Pretty much.
Oh.
You're okay.
Yeah, so what we find with a lot of, we try and make this initiative so we're empowering the farmer, we're understanding their core issues. The farmers seem to trust an industry organisation rather than an authoritarian organisation. It's just the way it is. So understanding their core issues and working with them, they kind of trust the co-op because the co-op is them. They are the co-op. And so we've had great success with that. A farmer doesn't need necessarily an ecologist. The farmer is the ecologist. They know when the mulberry birds show up and when that comes into flower and the warm breeze, and when, they're quite ecological at heart. And so it's really about empowering them to do that. They know that that's a weed. They've got a tractor. They've got fencing strainers. They've got all the fencing. They don't need any help necessarily with those what we call environmental things. They actually need help with the non-environmental things, which then enable them to be the environmentalist. Does that make sense? Just nod your head. That's me.